I've already had a trial run with this. This is Tuesday, April 26th. It is 6:31. This is our regular monthly school board meeting. We're here at Denfeld High School because of our move out of our Hawks, our central administration building. And so our monthly meetings have been held at Denfeld and occasionally on the East Campus as well. So we welcome our community, and it is being videotaped, and it will be up either later tonight or tomorrow morning, usually tomorrow morning. But I welcome you, and our first agenda is a call to order, so that's me. And I'll ask Clerk Oswald to take roll. So thank you for coming.
Member Eater.
Present.
Member Kirby.
Here.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Here.
Chair Lopal.
Here.
Member Oswald. That's me. I'm here. Amber Sadowski. Member Amber Sadowski. I'm sorry.
Here.
Member Sandholm.
Here.
Superintendent Magus.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
Present.
Deputy Clerk Erickson.
Here.
HR Director Severance.
Here.
And we have Board Secretary Paquette.
Here.
And Student Rep Soraya Crawford, sorry.
Hi.
Hi. And Student Rep Eileen Oss.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
So we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda tonight.
So moved.
Member Loeffler-Kemp makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Eater, all those in favor of accepting our agenda as printed and in our board book, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? It passes 7-0. Moving down our agenda, we now have our school community recognition, and I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bonds. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. And I am really excited today because I really feel honored when I have a chance to honor and recognize students. And tonight, members of the board, tonight I would like to recognize 3 student scholars: Stella Arpson, Emily Biesner, and Lucia Nelson. And they're sitting right here. Let's give them a round of applause right now. All 3 of these fine students competed at the Minnesota State Science and Engineering Fair on March 31st after taking first place in their categories at the Regional Science Fair. Lucia's project is called Study Notes, How Music Affects Learning.
And who's that? Ready? Okay.
Stella's project is called Does Awareness of Misleading Questions Reduce Memory Inaccuracy? She received a bronze award for her project. Emmeline's project is called Qualitative Analysis of the Effects of Climate Change on wildfire occurrences and severity in the Northeast Minnesota. During this competition, she received not 1, not 2, but 3 awards. One award was Outstanding Achievement for Excellence in Atmospheric or Related Science from the American Meteorology Society. She also received the Mortensen Environmental Excellence Award and That Geography Cultivating Empathy for the Earth Award from the National Geographic Society. Emmeline also received a digital anemometer from the Science Fair Coordinator from the Twin Cities of the Meteorological Association. Congratulations to all 3 students. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, look at all your teachers.
Would you 3 ladies like to just stay for a minute? I'm sure the board would love to say some words of encouragement to you, especially the superintendent.
So who wants to start?
I will. Okay. Congratulations. I love the science fair, and when I used to work with an organization called Clean Water Action, I used to judge at the local and the regional level. So I know what you went through when you went at that level anyways, to answer questions and talk about your projects, and just congratulations for, I know, all the work that went into it to get to the next level. So we're really proud of you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, our science teacher.
As a retired science teacher, I have to say I'm extremely proud of you, and I think it's just awesome in so many ways. And your teachers, and those teachers that are behind you that aren't your teachers are, I'm sure, extremely proud of you and the work and the effort that you put into this and your success. So just keep going after it and help make the world a better place, because what you've done and the things you're doing now can do that, can make a difference. So thank you.
And as the other licensed science teacher on the board, I'm very proud that you guys all get to excel at science, because that involves so many great skills that you'll use for the rest of your life. And it's amazing that you guys got awards and get to hold on to those for the rest of your life to show your accomplishments. And I'm very proud of you, and just as I'm sure everybody else is. So, thank you for volunteering to compete.
I too would like to say congratulations and thanks for being such great representatives of the district. I think if we think about why are we here? We're here to educate students and to help them achieve their potential. And you three have gone way above and beyond to shine your bright light of intellect. And I can't wait to see what you're doing in the future with the science background that you started in. There, in addition to this two science teachers we talked to, Mr. Bonds is also a science teacher, so we're pretty heavily stocked with science. So as you can see, it can be great for background in science or for becoming a future school board member or
I'd be remiss if I didn't say I hope you would join your school's debate and speech program. Because I'm sure that public speaking skill, did you have to present this? You know, yeah. So, great, good job. You know, that is the number one fear of a lot of students and a lot of adults. So I'm glad that you took on that extra risk and that extra stepping out of your comfort zone to do a public speaking type of activity as well. So thank you. It will serve you well.
I don't know if you were asked to say anything, but is there anything you'd like to just briefly share with us about the experience that you had participating or going on to the state level? Or about your project?
Yeah, well, Science Fair has been like a really great opportunity for all of us. We all started in middle school, so we've been doing it for a long time now, and it's a lot of fun, and we've learned a lot, and like definitely, like we started with very simple projects. We've definitely like learned a lot and developed a lot, so it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I've developed so many public speaking skills and gained confidence in that area too, and that's been so helpful in a lot of areas of my life. And I've learned so much throughout Science Fair, and Stella and I actually started a Science Fair club at East this year, and it's been going pretty well. So that's pretty exciting, and we want to get more kids interested in Science Fair in general because of how much it has benefited us.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been a great learning experience, and just trying to get more kids involved.
Congratulations.
Well, good luck.
Congratulations.
Yeah, then we have the professor of biology over here. We're heavy in the science.
congratulations.
Not biased.
Okay, one last.
Again, I really appreciate our district's commitment to a school and community recognition. We've watched not only students, but community partners, staff that have been honored and come before us. So that's a really great part of our meeting. So, yeah, and thank you. Thanks to everyone. Next on our agenda is our public comment, and Executive Secretary Paquette, I think, is going back to get the speaking order. So thank you for coming. Thank you for signing up to use your voices as well here at public comment. So while we get started for public comment, I'm going to ask Clerk Oswald to read our guidelines. The guidelines appear on our website under, I would think it would be under our policy 206 public comment, but it's also probably prominently put on our homepage for school board as far as our guidelines for public comment. So Clerk Oswald.
Public comment information. Information to know when you sign up to speak at school board meetings. Persons wishing to address the school board must sign in prior to the meeting, listing their name, address, and the matter on which you will speak. If you have any handouts for the board, please give them to the school board secretary, located out at the round table right there. Each person addressing the board will have 3 minutes total. Persons addressing the board will speak in the order in which they signed up. When speaking, the use of names or any information that identifies a specific individual is prohibited, and you will be asked to end your comments. Yes. Clerk of the board will start the stoplight timer. Here's the difference, people. Pay attention. At the start of each person's time. Our timer's being a little weird today. It must just be from all the funny weather, but the green light will come on. That means go. At 1 minute, the green light starts flashing for some unknown reason. At 15 seconds, which I don't think it's been 15 seconds, the yellow light will appear. So that will mean try to wrap it up immediately, because at 0 you have to stop and you will be gavelled by the chair. So
Softly.
Sorry about that.
Very softly.
we will work on this, for future meetings. But I wanted to point out the difference. And then persons addressing the board shall confine their comments to matters pertaining to the agenda or relevant matters of administrative concern. And in the interest of respect for each public comment speaker, please hold any commentary during the speaker's time until they are finished. And now, Member Sadowski will read the 11 Tools of Civility.
We will build on our shared beliefs and values of unity, high achievement, and responsible use of resources to create Duluth Public Schools and classrooms that are safe, supportive, and inclusive. We will work to inspire every student to achieve their potential and prepare students to lead productive, fulfilling lives as citizens of Duluth and the wider world. This school board recognizes 11 tools of civility that will provide increased opportunities for civil discourse in order to find positive resolutions to the issues that face our community. These tools include pay attention, listen, be inclusive, don't gossip, show respect, be agreeable, apologize, give constructive criticism, take responsibility, be honest and care for others, show your evidence, and share your reasoning.
Thank you. So with that, we'll go to our public comment. Our first speaker is Emily Vogt, and on deck is Danny Westholm. Hi, Emily.
Hello, and thank you for your time this evening. As a special education teacher in our district, I wanted to share a few of my experiences this year. Firstly, I wanted to express my gratitude for every single person that makes our school district what it is. From our amazing clerical and engineering custodial staff to our uplifting paraprofessionals, our inviting cafeteria staff, and supportive administration. As a special education teacher, I cannot verbalize enough about how we would not be as successful without our amazing work of our parapro team that they do day in and day out. These professionals often work with our most vulnerable, diverse, and high-need students. They are asked to adapt to ever-changing and growing needs of our students, and they take these new challenges head-on. While we have a super paraprofessional staff now, this year has been filled with growing pains. Our school was not fully staffed until mid-January, and I know we are very lucky not to have any current openings, as there are many district-wide. However, we are in desperate need of better staff-to-student ratios, training for all of our staff so that we can continue to implement responsive and consistent interventions, more connections with our community support systems, and more time to address the student needs. It's hard to balance to take care of the needs of our students and also provide quality academic instruction. Currently, I provide small group intensive interventions with some of my groups being 8 to 11 students. These groups continue to increase in time. These are not small groups at this point. Many of my students I work with do truly need a small group setting of 2 to 4 students. It is difficult to meet those needs of students in a small group because they all deserve the direct, effective intervention support. I am blessed to have a para for one of these groups, but my students do not receive support daily due to staffing coverage issues and unexpected student needs. That causes disruptions to their learning. Our paraprofessional staff are a necessary layer of support to make our classrooms more inclusive. Many of our students wouldn't have the opportunities in the classroom without their support. We cannot effectively do our jobs without their support. As a district, we need to do a better job to support our SPED students and to ensure that they are being supported by a trained, collaborative, and well-staffed department. Thank you.
Next is Danny Westholm, and on deck is Jody Timmersman.
3 minutes.
Yeah,
Can I
you
sit
betcha.
down?
Yeah, you can.
Can I see my timer better? Can I
I'll
just
start it
go?
after you say your name or whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll give you
that's
an extra couple
nice.
seconds.
Okay.
I tried.
Oh, okay. Good evening. I would like to thank the board for letting me speak tonight. My name is Danny Westholm, and I'm a teacher at Duluth East High School. Since I know you have an interest in the everyday activities of our teachers and you take into consideration all that we do, I thought you might like to hear my COVID story. I was one of the lucky ones. I was already triple vaccinated by the time I contracted COVID at the end of March. I actually wouldn't have even known that I had it if my husband hadn't been so diligent about testing our family members. I tested positive on the evening of March 27th, and it was a Sunday evening, and I immediately texted my principal, she loves text messages on Sunday night, and asked her what to do, because I've gotten away with it this far. She arranged to have our building sub cover my classes for the next week, which was the last week of the quarter. I was beside myself with worry because I teach 3 sections of public speaking. Seniors need this class to graduate. And a lot of them had not been doing what they need to do in my class, and they needed my win in order to make up speeches. I had just started a new unit in Honors English, and I also had the MCAs the following week. I immediately went to work making sub-plans on Sunday evening. Monday morning, I sat on my computer as the student emails and Canvas assignments rolled in. Our current learning management system, Canvas, ensures that teaching and learning can continue regardless if the teacher or student is in the classroom or whether absent for COVID, sports activities, or family commitments or obligations. This platform made me able to teach from home while my students were in my classroom with a sub. I did eventually develop a fever on my second day at home, but it only lasted about 8 hours. And besides that Tuesday when I didn't feel well, I was on my computer every day working. Some of my colleagues argued that I was using my sick time, so I shouldn't be working so much. I knew this was true. I did the same thing back in 2019 when I broke my back. Except then I used Google Classroom and I had a cadet FaceTime me all of the speeches. So I made it work. I understand the district needs to pay for my sub when I'm gone. It was my choice to work at home when I had a sub in my classroom. However, I'm also aware of ESSER funds, and I wonder if they could be applied towards compensating teachers for working while at home with COVID. Now, a day before, I realized that I'm lucky in terms of when I got COVID, not only because I was triple vaccinated and showed little symptoms, but because of my quarantine. I know colleagues who had to quarantine for 10 or 14 days, and I only had to stay at home for 5 days, and I only had to use 5 days of my sick time. I do want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to take back 3 hours per day. If you can make a change to this policy, will you consider the time allotted to take back? Because we are still working even when we are at home. This is the one-time request for teachers to be compensated for work done during quarantine. Thank you for your time. Sorry, I went over 10 seconds. Thank
you. Jody, and then on deck is Alyssa Thompson.
Good. Hi. Hi, good evening. I'm Jody Timmersman. Thank you all for your service being here tonight. I'm a teacher at Ordinis Middle School. I teach global studies, 8th grade. I'm here tonight as a parent and a teacher here in ISD709. I have 2 elementary students in this district and 1 more child in area daycare. These last 2 years have been a challenge to juggle work, their educational schedules, and COVID protocol. I would like to mention tonight my reality regarding the impact of COVID and what it has had on my sick leave. I already owe the sick bank due to taking a 6-week maternity leave in 2018. As a result, at the start of each academic year, 5 days are automatically deducted to repay the sick bank, and I am afforded 5 sick days with no personal days every school year until my maternity leave is repaid. So far, this year alone, I have missed all or part of 21 days to care for myself, for illness, COVID protocols, or not having childcare due to COVID-related closures. And this is with no one in my family ever actually testing positive so far. Fingers crossed. This number would be dramatically higher if I didn't have a partner that could help share the load and stay home additional days. I appreciate the gesture of returning 3 hours of sick time per day during a COVID-related absence. Thank you. The impact of losing those 5 hours per day has had an overwhelming effect on my sick leave and has put me in a deeper sick leave debt, causing added stress during an already stressful time. I'm a crier. So as a teacher, when I've been out due to COVID guidelines,
There are tissues on the table.
I do have these. So as a teacher, when I've been out due to COVID, I have put in countless hours maintaining my Canvas course, making meaningful subplans, correcting student work, and communicating with my students and families. And I also feel the need to advocate for untenured staff who don't have the opportunity to pull paid sick time from the bank and who are also putting in countless unpaid hours. So I encourage you as a school board to make provision for teachers as you did administrators for not deducting sick time due to COVID when one is still working from home. I understand that we are not unique to the workforce struggles in dealing with time off for COVID-related absences for employees, but I ask that we get creative and explore options that can be helpful to all staff, new and experienced. Recognizing COVID protocol, although necessary, has been really hard on families. So thanks for your consideration.
Alyssa Thompson, and after Alyssa is our last speaker, Judith Mckeever.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Thompson. I am the Senior Office Support Specialist in the Office of Education Equity here at Duluth School District. I'm also the President of the Duluth Local Clerical Unit. I'd like to take a brief moment to thank all the teachers and all the other staff that have showed up in numbers tonight. It's great to see. And then also our district leaders and members of the school board, because I know you guys are not in easy roles and you make tough decisions every day that I believe are always in the best interest of our students. Being a DenFL graduate and having a mother who has been a teacher in the school district for over 27 years, I've always been a part of Duluth Public Schools. Before joining the school district, I was an account manager at a website marketing and developing company. I wasn't really sure if that job was where I wanted to stay, so when the opportunity to apply for a position here became available, I decided to give it a shot. I began working for the district at East High School, and then I moved into the finance department, and now I'm in OEE. My current position is unique and has brought me to a place where I can truly appreciate and understand the main goal behind all the work that we do, which is to create an equitable education for students in Duluth. I get to be a part of change and progress, address issues of concern, and engage with community members, staff members, including several of you, in the Education Equity Advisory Committee meetings, our recruitment and retention program, and other committees under the Achievement and Integration Plan. The progression of these committees this year has been inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to watching the growth. Circumstances has led me to a newly found passion, serving in a union leadership role, representing the members of our unit. Our unit is a largely diverse group who hold various positions throughout the district. We have members who serve as office support specialists at the sites, others who are administrative or executive assistants to directors, coordinators, principals, department managers, and our finance department includes members in accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing, and district payroll processing. These roles and responsibilities are an essential part in the successful operations of ISD 709. Unfortunately, we have struggled over the years to retain these employees. We have one of the worst turnover rates when compared to other districts throughout the state of Minnesota. The biggest reason I hear from our members is the low pay. And I can totally relate to this because I and many other clerical staff work second jobs to earn a livable income. We entered into our first negotiation meeting yesterday, and I believe we presented the school district suggestions that will help recruit and retain our current hardworking staff. So I'm hopeful we're able to come to an agreement and reflect the essentialness we serve at our school district. So thank you for your time.
And our last speaker is Judith Mckeever.
Good evening. You all know me, I'm the chairperson of the paraprofessional bargaining unit. And I just want to thank my colleagues, our teachers, our custodial staff, our paraprofessionals. But I came tonight because we're still waiting on our contract, and I know you're going to hopefully approve it tonight. We've struggled hard. Your paraprofessionals have worked hard through COVID. Your custodial staff, your teachers, it was all of us. It took 100%. We're still striving to hire paraprofessionals. I think we're like 31 paraprofessionals down at this time, and it's a struggle. And that's something that we really need to look at next year. With that being said, we need to move forward and approve this, make sure that we get this contract approved and start fresh. I think we can do it, and I want to thank you and working together with our staff. Thanks.
Moving on to our agenda, now we are in number 7. It's reading, communications, and petitions, and we have none. So we're going to then go to number 8, and then number 8 is report of the superintendent, and under that we have 3 line items. First, we hear from our student representations from East and Denfeld. Then we have a superintendent's report, and then we just have a brief opportunity to look over the month's schedule of meetings and events. So I'm going to turn it to Superintendent Magus.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start off with our student representative, Sharon. And if you want to start, Representative Crawford.
All right. Before I begin, I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question that I would like to ask. Would I do that at the end of my report or wait till there's a time to ask a question?
It depends on what your question is. If it pertains, if you've seen something on our agenda that you think your question would reflect in that area, that would be a great time to ask the question.
Okay.
If there, yeah.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Soraya.
Hi. I'm Soraya Crawford, the Denfeld High School student representative for the school board. To begin, I want to say on March 25th, our school, the students came, on March 25th, Denfeld High School students wore blue and yellow to show their support for the Ukraine. Our exec board also brought blue and yellow pins for our students to wear so that everyone could be included and show their support as well. And our seniors went around and raised money as well, which I thought was so awesome, and it was amazing of them. Okay, this next segment is pretty hard to digest. The week of March 27th, one of our students, Luke Isaacson, unfortunately passed away. His parents hosted a celebration of Luke's life and for people to remember him who have encountered him throughout their lives. It was at Linroot Mittel's funeral home. And Denville did a really good job at supporting their students, offering resources for grieving students with the help of Essentia Health. That was really nice. March 29th, our juniors took the ACT and got the results back before spring break. So that was nice to start the break off with hopefully good news.
Of course.
Our robotics team, which is called Denfield Nation Automation, finished as a semi-finalist in the Seven Rivers Regional Competition, and they won the Quality Award. This Friday, Denfield will be hosting our red carpet concert, where our choir, band, and orchestra will be performing at 7 o'clock in our auditorium. May 7th, on Saturday, is our prom in the Malting building, and our school also hosted a prom dress swap, so students who didn't have a prom dress were able to get one. Today, multiple students participated in a focus group for a strategic planning process and Duluth Public Schools will undergo, and it was really nice to hear the students voice their concerns with the school. Two Denfield speech members represented our school at the MSHSL State Speech Tournament. Senior Tessa Schauer placed 10th at state in series drama. Tessa was also named to the All-State Speech Team. Junior Madeline Watts placed 9th in serious prose. Yeah. And my favorite thing to talk about today.
It's not speech.
Sorry.
You and I.
April 23rd, Denfield High School hosted Act So competitions. It was with the NAACP. It was amazing. It was geared towards African American students. And basically there were different competitions in STEM, business, humanities, performance arts, and visual arts. And it was great to be there. I hope some of you got to watch. Also, oh no, I'll say that last. Okay, so Anthony Miller, who did a business proposal, won a $1,000 scholarship, as well as Marnaries Ferguson, who entered a short story. The $1,000 scholarship also doesn't have to be used for college. It can be used for anything they want, so that was awesome. And Summer Rain and Xavier Hayes, who both submitted poems for their competition, also won a $1,000 scholarship, as well as won gold medals, and will be going to nationals in Georgia. And the NAACP is also giving out free tickets to AXO students who competed to view their sponsored movie at NorthX North Film Festival. I'll be attending, so I see some of you there. And finally, my question. First, I want to say, not to take away from these great ladies, it was so amazing to see you guys. It was amazing. I love seeing women in STEM. So my question is, how are students able to be recognized and honored by the board? Is it a recommendation type of thing? And is anybody allowed to make a recommendation, or is it only the board?
Great question. We actually, with our she's not here today, but Adele Wellings, our communication director, our coordinator. She asks board members, we also ask our administrators if there are things that are worthy of recognition and things that we should be aware of. And so we solicit from our leaders and board members if there are things that should be recognized. And so if students or others would like to have us consider someone, they can always send an email to Adele Wellings. Again, she's our coordinator of communications, or no, it's a new title now.
Communications officer.
Communication officer. She's a communication officer, and we will consider those individuals for recognition.
Thank you. That was all.
Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thank you for sharing.
Easy question.
And now on to Student Representative Noss from East High School.
Alright, so I'd like to apologize for my short report this month because of break and it being a time of year with less going on. But with many of our events upcoming, I'll have a much more thorough report for you all next month. So the week of the 4th, we had a Spirit Week and a dance at the school on Friday. The Spirit Days were more low-key than usual, so not as many people dressed up. The semi-formal dance was well received and everyone had a great time being able to dress up and have a fun night. Even though we were unable to have a venue, we tried to make it as special as possible. We had a photo backdrop, decorations, and all kinds of different games. So our speech team went to state with 11 competitors, and Mr. Jones, one of the coaches, won Coach of the Year this year. Girls and boys lacrosse seasons are starting up, and the girls lacrosse team had their first game last Friday. Track has also begun recently, and the boys won a track meet on Saturday. The track team is flourishing with many new runners and a great team atmosphere. Knowledgeable also went to state recently. Staff Appreciation Week is next week, so we're planning to do some sort of breakfast fun thing for all the staff at East. GSA just applied for a grant to put towards all-state safe zone training, and they're also working to connect with the Ordine East GSA as well. Prom is May 7th, and our theme is Royal Ball. Tickets just started being sold today. Exec and Association are looking for their new boards, and applications are due this Friday. Red and Gray is the week after prom, and we are excited to have an all-school assembly again. And so the theme and candidates will be announced on May 2nd. There's a talent show today and Thursday at the Ordine Theater run by the acapella group is doing the talent show. And most recently, Key Club has volunteered at Vickers 5K, Lake Walk Bayfront cleanup, and has also started a desk cleaning opportunity for students at East to help our teachers out with the desks get dirty very quickly. They're planning on helping with the walk and bike to school day coming up, and North Star's upcoming carnival, as well as Grandma's Marathon. We also had the focus group at East today, and I participated in it, and I found it to be a really a good experience, and it felt like we were really being heard, so that was good. And that is all I have for you guys today.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, and I'm really glad to hear that you were participating in our strategic planning work. We're going to share a little bit more tonight on strategic planning, but an important, really important part of the strategic planning process is making sure that we're listening to multiple voices and listening to, what are the desired experiences of our students, what are the desired experiences of our staff, as well as our families and communities. So really happy that you were able to take part. So tonight my topics are the student representative reports, which we've gone through, brief update on where we're at with some of our negotiations, update on strategic planning, as well as just a brief opportunity for conversation on the superintendent's evaluation that will be coming up. So as far as our negotiations update, there are lots of things that are being worked on, and I think it's important that we are very thoughtful around making sure, as we said, all people in the district, all people who are serving as employees play a very, very vital role to the work being done here. And tonight we are really, really thrilled to have a vote tonight on the teacher and paraprofessional contracts. having served as a teacher and paraprofessional myself, very, very, very important. We also have made a lot of progress on the contract with our principals, and there's a vote scheduled for later this week. With that being concluded, we'll restart our director negotiations. We have Oilers negotiations coming up later this week. Clerical negotiations started, as we heard, yesterday, and the next meeting will be this following Monday. Then the NCBAA initial meeting was today, next meeting being the 11th of May. And we're waiting on dates from the DWIA and EEA groups to set those dates. And then we are currently scheduling meetings for some of our individual contracts, knowing that we have individual contracts for some of our administrators. Those are taking part as well. So really happy for all the, it's been hard work. I mean, I think that this has been, we see it around the state, we see it around the country, that this has been a challenging time in general for contract negotiations, but I want the board to know, and also everyone else to know, that I from the bottom of my heart, I truly care about the work that's being done, and that I am glad that we're moving forward with contracts, and I feel very positive, and I may even grab a slice of the leftover pizza on the way out. But thank you. Our strategic planning update. As I mentioned too, the strategic planning process is very important to us. We have many things going on related to strategic planning, but it's incredibly important for a district to have a clear mission and vision and plan for where we want to go. There are plans in place, but I think it's important for us to reflect on what are our current needs. We're thinking about that, and we've already mentioned, the needs of our staffing are different than they have been before. How do we focus on creating and maintaining and recruiting for a thriving workforce in taking care of our staff? Thinking about our student needs first and foremost. What are we doing to make sure that the students have an exceptional experience and that the outcomes for our students are very positive? And we also have a lot of unmet or unfinished, I should say, learning needs from a lot of students from the pandemic, as well as mental health needs that need to be given attention. And what we're finding too is many of our students are not ready or interested in returning to the same old education that was there in fall of 2019. We've learned new things, we've done new things, and so re-envisioning what is it that we want from an instructional purpose is really important to us. So going through the strategic planning process as a community is very important to us. We have several work sessions, or we have several sessions planned. We had our work session first with the board since our last meeting on April 7th, and that was quite productive, and we plan to schedule follow-up work sessions to continue that work. There's a story wall and life cycle session. Those are two different things. There's a very diverse group of people that are going to be part of that planning team. The story wall is basically the history of where we've been as a district, and the environmental scan is going to be the work that's being done to look at our current reality, as well as those sessions that we've heard about from some of our students, and I invite staff to take part in any of our staff sessions as well. This process, as we mentioned before, will run through fall of 2020 and focuses on, again, assessing what's our current reality, what's our vision, and then what are our plans to get there. The 3-year operational plan for the district, school improvement plans for individual schools, and also hoping to construct a 3-year board agenda and plan for the work being done there as well. And if you'll note that within the presentation, there's also a link to our, and actually it won't show because it won't, but there is a link in there, I assure you, that will show you the information on the strategic plan with the timeline and the team. There's a team of over 30 people that are representing, as well as the different events that we're having. There's a 5-minute video too that gives an overview of the strategic planning process. And now I'm going to try and get back to where I was because I'm not there right now. There I am. All right. So I skipped forward. the next piece that I have is related to the superintendent's evaluation. We had talked about a date for a closed session, and thus far with the polling that our executive assistant Patty has put together, it's looking like May 17th is the date we're looking at, right? Prior to the board meeting. And as we recognize individuals, and we heard a little bit about clerical support, I just want to say how much I appreciate Ms. Paquette as my administrative assistant, and tomorrow, as we probably know, is Administrative Assistance Day. So I know she serves the board as well, so thank you, Patty, for all you do. And I need to stop for flowers on the way out. But we also want to say as well that the coming week, and we have our committee of the whole, so we can mention it there as well, is Staff Appreciation Week. And that is a very, very important week for the district. And so it's important to think about those things as well. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next thing on the agenda is just a review of our scheduled meetings and events. And so we are looking at the week of May 2nd through May 6th, and we have our policy committee, and we're going to hear a report from the policy committee later in the agenda, but really appreciative of the work that the policy committee has been doing after getting through COVID and spending a lot of our time in committees on the needs at hand, the urgent and important. But we have a policy committee meeting next week at 3:30 on Tuesday, and then we follow that with a committee of the whole meeting. And you'll also hear a report about our April 5th committee of the whole, where we heard from, I think, 6 different school-related programs and teachers and staff, and we'll review that tonight. But committee of the whole meetings are also open to the public and really where a lot of questions, discussion, and exchange of ideas happen. So that's also a great meeting for our public to attend. So we have that meeting next Tuesday at 4:30. These are up at the United Healthcare building. We've struggled to find just the right place where we're not interrupting things that are already happening in spaces within our schools. And so we've gone up to the United Healthcare for our policy committees and our committee of the whole meetings. And then the week of May 9th, it's our HR business services as we continue the very important work of the budget. Those are also great committee meetings to attend. And then we have our next regular school board meeting on May 17th. Do we see anything that we've missed? Sometimes. No? So going on with our agenda, it is the report of our standing committees. So here we'll just kind of briefly review what we were covering on our committee meetings. So I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
Do you have the budget 9A? Don't we have budget FY23 overview?
Do we? Okay, we do. So it's number 9. It's number 9. Well, yeah, we do. So number 9 on our agenda is administrative approved presentations, and so it's budget for fiscal year 23. It's an overview, and we have a handout on it that looks like this.
Yes, and it's also on board.
Okay. And this is just our early
Yes.
early glimpse, early
I'm gonna try to
prelims.
cast here too, I hope.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for the opportunity to share a brief overview. I'm going to try to be brief. As we all know, this is everyone's favorite time of year, budget time. And what was that?
I said it, no, it's colored pie chart time.
It is. First of all, just to give you a brief overview on the timeline, as obligated by state statute, we must adopt a school board budget for the 22-23 school year, or what we call fiscal year 23 or FY23 by June 30th. So our work right now is to pull together as much information as we can and to begin to have discussions with the board
We have engaged and have scheduled committees of the whole meeting, 3 meetings coming up 2 in May, 1 in June, in preparation for having this to be adopted at our regular school board meeting. If you remember last year, we actually had a special school board meeting right at the end of the month because of all of the ESSER changes and all of the things that were happening with the legislature. We weren't really sure what kind of budget we could adopt. And so we're more hopeful this year that we'll be able to be prepared for the regular school board meeting in June and have that budget ready to prepare for you. So tonight what I would like to share with you is an overview of our general fund. So when we think about the school district budget, we have multiple funds, but for tonight we wanted to introduce to the board and to those that are listening just an overview of our general fund. That's our operating fund that in school world includes general operating budget, our transportation budget, and then our operating capital budget, so our capital and facilities budgets. The other budgets that we'll talk about at our committees of the whole meeting coming up will include food service, community service, construction, debt service, our internal service fund, and then our student activity account. So we'll have multiple opportunities to dig into those others, but tonight we wanted to share an overview about those. The document that's in board book and the document that you're looking at right now, I won't go over all of the definitions that you can have an opportunity to read those, but if you have any questions as you're going along or as I'm going along, please stop me and we can walk through those. Okay. An important piece here too is to share with you that tonight we're talking about the operating fund without ESSER. So we want you to see what the budget would look like if we didn't have ESSER in it, sort of that pre-ESSER rolling into where we are right now, and then how ESSER is playing a role in how we're going to get to that final adopted budget. So we're going to be looking at the component pieces of our operating general fund and what those pieces look like. So the first excellent pie chart that you're going to look at is on the first page, and it talks about where we get our general fund revenues from. And so as you can see on our chart, the majority of our general fund is from state sources, or 75% of our budget, approximately $84.6 million will come from state sources. Local sources, which accompanies about 20% of our general fund budget, is our tax levy and other local revenues. So things like sports fees and other participation fees, gate receipts, and other things that run through the local, but the biggest portion of local would be the property tax levy in relation to the general fund. And remember, the levy has other component pieces, including community service and debt service. So approximately half of our levy is actually debt service that we're not talking about today, but we'll talk about that in another piece. And we'll talk about a little bit of the component pieces there. For fiscal year 23 as of today, and please keep in mind that this is a work in progress, and as we get more information and as we understand more of the components, we will be editing and amending this as we get towards June, so hopefully we can provide even better information. Keeping in mind that right now the basic formula allowance that the state is providing for fiscal year 23 will be $6,863 per student. That is correlating to a 2% increase based on the current year we're in. That was done in last year's legislative session as part of the biennium budget. We have been very hopeful that we would see investments by our legislature this year. Seeing the first bills coming out of the omnibus education on both the House and Senate, we are not projecting at this time that we're going to get anything more on our basic allowance right now, based on what we're seeing from the Senate, who is not putting anything into education because they feel that the budget year was last year and that they have provided us with general revenue that we need. But you'll see in another one of these pages what we could potentially project if we do see, say, a 1 or 2% increase that comes out of negotiations. But as of this time, we are basing our budget on current law, which would be the 6863, which is the basic formula allowance. We've talked a few times in the past year about enrollment. We know that enrollment is a key piece of our budget because that drives much of our general operating revenue. For this budget that we're sharing right now as a projection on the revenue side, we are projecting 7,985 adjusted average daily membership students, or adjusted ADM. This is not head count. This gets complicated, but as we've walked through that, that is the enrollment status of all students combined together, whether a student stays 5 days or stays 180 days, however many days they're there. If they're a stay from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, they're a 1.0 to us, a 1 ADM. And then all those students that may be coming in and out of the district are a fractional ADM, and we add up all those together. As a reminder, at the end of fiscal year 20, which was just the beginning of the pandemic for us, we were at 8,369 students. And we are, at the end of last year, we were at 7,860, and we are projecting 7,985, which is about where we think we're gonna land at the end of this year. We do continue to hope that we'll see re-enrollments throughout the district, that we may see some increases, but as we know that regional opportunities and change with other enrollment opportunities in our region may be impacting our student enrollment right now. But again, we are projecting a similar amount, but we will keep track of this, and as we see and work with our buildings and our enrollment folks, Cattery Little in our Mars department does a fantastic job of recording and monitoring where we are in terms of enrollment. If we feel that we can change that for the better, we will, but if we need to be honest about what those real enrollments are gonna look like, we will talk about those again before we get to June 30th.
Can you remind us how you project that? Is that talking to principals? Is that looking over years?
All those things.
Okay.
So we meet with all the building leaders. They provide us estimates of what our classes look like. We also work with Cattery Little. We do what they call a progression ratio. We use history, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and modify that to say, what do those look like? We look at our current opportunities where students, for example, maybe going to a non-public school in the elementary and they roll back in middle or high school. So we track those trends of when we see re-enrollments. And then we have students who also choose enrollment options in the high school level or choose post-secondary enrollment options or other things that could affect us. So we monitor all those things and try to keep track of those. But it's a constantly moving number, so we try to do our best to look at history to help us when we think. And as you hear me at every business services meeting when we talk about the enrollment trends, you know, at the halfway point of the year is when we kind of peak in enrollment, and then we start seeing general declines in our enrollment because we have students unenrolling or have graduated or are choosing another option. So we tend to see every year these last few months our final enrollment declining just slightly. But it's something that we prepare for and we understand, and we build that into the conversation. Any other questions on enrollment? I just want to make sure.
Do we do anything with knowing housing projects or apartment, buildings that come in? Anybody from any other partners that we have that alert us that there's potential growth or not?
Really, registrations at the school level are what drive us. Yep. So we monitor where we see opportunities for housing and other opportunities, but then we really rely on our building clericals and our building leaders who do those enrollments. We have some buildings that have more volatile enrollments. We have students who are families that enroll in multiple districts at the same time and make the choice right before school starts, so we can have enrollments in our district, but they're also enrolling in other places too, and then make that decision at the end. So sometimes we have to wait until we see them. They often say we want to see the kids in the seats before we actually can count on those numbers on those first few weeks of school. Any other questions on enrollment? So we are at this time projecting a stable compared to FY22, but keeping in mind that we're down still over 360 students compared to pre-pandemic times.
Can you say that number again, please?
We're down about 360 students from pre-pandemic or the end of fiscal year 20, June 30th, 2020.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And having sat in that position back there and hearing that number, I don't think we need to talk about it tonight or anything, but you know that we're thinking about how we need to attract our students. And it's right here. It's all of you that are talented and smart and so good with our kids. And we're so glad you're here tonight to celebrate that and to remind you how much we appreciate all of the work that you do, and it's because of you that we aren't even lower in numbers, but it's gonna take all of us, and I just feel remiss when I have all of you sitting here, and we hear enrollment, and we know it's dropping. If I was sitting there, I would have said, well, what are you doing to reach out to our students and to reach out to our community? And so we're in this together. So let's talk to our new neighbors. Just sold my house with, I'm hoping, three new enrollees into our West Duluth schools. So thank you. Thanks for what you do. We'll get there. Thanks, Kat. Sorry.
Sure. The last slice of the pie that you see there is the purple slice, which is federal. Federal is 5% of our operating budget. In the general fund, those are mainly our federal title program dollars, our federal special ed dollars, and we do have some federal direct, which would be American Indian revenue, and then some smaller grants. Please note that I have on here, and I shared, this does not include the federal ESSER dollars at this time. We'll be talking about that separately, and we'll be doing a whole separate tracking budget as we have a couple different times this past school year, so everybody can see what those dollars are doing and how they have progressed since we received those dollars. But again, this is looking at our operational budget. We've talked many times about the federal contribution being less than what we had hoped. In terms of what contribution the federal government would have, especially in relation to special education. We've heard for many years that their goal was 40% of the cost of special education would come from federal sources. For Duluth Public Schools, just in relation to special ed, it's about 5.8%. So not exactly where we would hope to have been in terms of where those funds are coming from. So again, from federal title programming, I just put a notation here that we are saying that we think those are going to be projected to be similar than what they were in this current year for title revenues. It is based on, a portion of that calculation is based on free and reduced lunch count, and as you recall, we've talked about this a couple different times. Our basic skills or compensatory revenue is based on free and reduced lunch counts, and we have seen a pretty significant decline over the past 2 years, and going back about 6 years, we've lost over $3 million of compensatory revenue due to the lower amount. We've had great discussions about why we see that lower amount, and please keep in mind that due to circumstances, yes, the USDA offered free lunches for the past 2 years, but our efforts at the building level, at our staffing level, they have done many outreach to get as many people. Part of it is that less people qualify. People are making more money and people are not qualifying. People are going back to work. So we have less people that qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that is a component piece. And then of course, the loss of enrollment, the loss of over 500 students compared to FY20 means that some of those students may have been students who qualified for free and reduced lunch as well. So just kind of making sure that we're thoughtful about that piece. But the reality is compensatory revenue is another area in which we're going to see another slight decline of about $300,000 compared to last year, but the year before was $1.4 million.
Am I correct to ask that, or to maybe it's just more of a comment, that title funding is historically like a year behind? So
in the count?
Well, in the funding aspect of it, like next year we're going to get this year's count?
Yes, that is correct.
And so, you know, I understand a lot of people are gonna be like, you know, why should we, you know, hunt so hard for free and reduced applicants and that sort of thing, because it's not doing us any good. Well, it's because it's gonna be based on this year.
Yep.
And next year, you're funding your future kind of thing, so.
Similarly for compensatory for next school year was based on the fall counts this past October. There's nothing we can do right now to increase compensatory revenue for next school year. It's a year from now that we can help. So for some things, what we're doing is trying to help our future, not necessarily help our current. But any enrollment increases, any free and reduced lunch increases help support some of our revenue streams. So thank you for that observation. Any questions, other questions on the first page?
Not really a question. I was just gonna maybe give you an opportunity to talk about that we actually are lobbying on that very issue of, if you wanna just kind of tie that in so everyone can hear.
So, for lobbying for, especially for compensatory, we are a district who supports using a grandfather clause to take the greater enrollments from the past 3 years. One thing we know about compensatory is that it hit districts differently, so there isn't one fix that's gonna help every school district equally, which is why we're requesting a flexible grandfather. So for those districts who have the highest enrollment, like for Duluth Public Schools, we'd like to use 2020 enrollment, but for other districts, it might be 2021, it might be 2019. So we are advocating for a change in the calculation of compensatory revenue. Last year, when we talked about the loss that we had of over 1.4 million, when we looked at how much compensatory revenue was not distributed to school districts, it was over $73 million. And that just went back into the state general fund. It wasn't redistributed to other districts. It was overall $73 million less was distributed to all schools in the state. So we, of course, are advocating for all of that money to come back to schools, and then utilizing the formula that is most advantageous for us. There are multiple bills right now out there. Obviously, there's districts who have some different perspectives. I am really thankful for the opportunity that we had to meet with our legislators and our delegation, and having an opportunity to meet with Chair Dabney of the Education Finance Committee in the House. He's been very receptive to input from Duluth Public Schools, so we're very appreciative of that opportunity. So any organizations that support, such as MSBA, Education Minnesota, MASA, and others, I think this is one area that I think everyone is supporting, that the compensatory revenue calculation could be more robust for schools right now. Thank you for that opportunity. Any other observations or questions on this before we go to the second page? On the second page, I have the same revenue, that same projected $113.6 million, but I put it in a different jazzy pie chart, broken out just a little bit to kind of give a different perspective on that same. So the first page we looked at local, state, and federal. Now we're looking at it in terms of what do those dollars mean to Duluth Public Schools as they come into our budget and into our district. So the largest component piece of that 113 million is about 71 million that we just call general local. So it doesn't have a lot of strings attached to it. It comes in the form of that basic allowance or other component pieces that don't have specific ties related to it. Working from the bottom up, the red piece of the pie is transportation, keeping in mind that for school districts, there is no required transportation fund anymore. We're not required to set aside, but we have identified through the calculations that the state does what would be related transportation revenues, so we show that. And that also includes the special education portion of transportation, so we know that a component piece of the special education revenue is related to being reimbursed for the transportation costs of special education. Right above that is our blue pie, which is our special education. Also, this is not a categorical. I think there's some confusion about how we receive special education revenue. It is not a per student allocation. It is a reimbursement of eligible expenditures for the state side. And then we get a yearly allocation on the federal side. So this includes both our state share, less the transportation piece, which gets moved to transportation, plus our special education federal share. So that is approximately 15.2 million of revenue. And when we get to the expense side, you'll see how that correlates to how we record special education expenditures. We also have a facilities / technology / capital. This would be our operating capital and our long-term facilities maintenance revenue. So this year we're projecting just a little over $6 million for those component pieces. That will include the projects that we're doing, facilities projects throughout the district, and then also our general technology and capital budgets. And then finally, the yellow piece of the pie is what we are calling strategic or categorical. So these would be revenues that apply to certain programs or district strategies, which include things like compensatory revenue, that include things like staff development, component pieces that we have set aside for specific purposes. So just to kind of give you that visual of, you know, a little over 60% is kind of for that general operations, and then approximately just shy of 40% is for more categorical spending that we have for our district. And you can see the little explanations there at the bottom. Does anyone have any questions on this page? Okay. Shoot, I don't have a chart on this page. Shoot, I have to do better, guys, sorry about that. I do have a lot of little graphs here, or
Boxes.
lists. So we have the same revenue, again, but looking at it from restricted and unrestricted. So this is kind of from an auditing standpoint that we have to, certain funds, certain revenues must be spent in certain ways by statute. And if you don't spend all those dollars, they must be reserved into account related to that restricted fund. So we're just showing you in the general fund those categories and what estimated revenue. This could be state aid or levy. So some of these are all state aid, some of these are all levy, and some of them are a combination of both. So overall, we have a little bit, just over $17 million of projected general fund restricted funds. And then we have approximately 96.6 what we consider from an audited standpoint unrestricted. But as you saw in the big chart, we have purpose for a lot of those dollars, which doesn't mean that we're just spending it on anything, but things like special education, things like transportation, things like facilities would be considered unrestricted, except for the component piece of long-term facilities maintenance revenue that you can see there at 3.5 million is an actual reserve, which must be set aside, spent in the ways that are approved by the state, and then hold into an account until we can spend them. And we've had a lot of conversations about LTFM in that timing and supply chain has caused our projects to fall within the wrong fiscal years of which we get our revenues. So we're seeing some sways in our levy certification, we're seeing some sways in our budget, but we're trying to get those back on track. And if you remember last fall when we approved the bond sale for LTFM, so the district sold $10 million worth of bonds, that's going to help us stabilize that so that we have that pool of money that we can do the projects as they are ready to be done rather than the up and down of the levy. So we're trying to keep that stable. That was a goal, and Member Trinka was very critical in that discussion and helping us support that work to make sure that we could create some stability in the budget. So did you have a question?
Yeah, I just, you used LTFM.
Yeah.
We all know what that means, but do you want to let people know
you.
and then maybe anytime there's an acronym?
Thank you. I love letters, and educators always have great letters, but so do finance people, everybody. So there's some good stuff in finance too. Long-term facilities maintenance revenue is what we call LTFM, and that is a categorical restricted fund in which we have to apply each year. The board approves our LTFM plan every year. We're required to have a 10-year plan submitted to the state, and then we work towards the reconciliation at the end of each year for audit. Thank you for that. If you look down into the middle of the page, I have some just revenue considerations. Please note that right now we are not adding any revenue considerations, but I wanted to just provide some information to the board. If we were to have a 1% increase in the formula allowance, if that were to come to fruition, I just wanted to let folks know that for our district, that would equate to about just shy of $600,000. So for every 1% that the legislature, if they were to consider putting more on the basic allowance, that would be dollars that could help our budget. So just, we're not projecting that, we're not including that right now, but just wanted to give you that option. As a reminder, the ESSER investment, due to some of our enrollment declines and other pieces of our budget, we had committed a year ago that we would be setting aside $3 to $4 million per year, this current year we're in right now, and next fiscal year, to maintain our FTE and our staffing because of our enrollment decline and knowing that our revenues were going to be less than what they had been prior to 2020. So again, you'll see that coming in as we will most likely need those dollars to help create a balanced budget. I did put in here too that if we were to see a potential re-enrollment of students that we might have lost, a re-enrollment of 50 students would generate us about $420,000. So if we could see more students coming in, that could be an additional revenue. But at this time, we are projecting a balanced pupil count. But just to give you that. Also, we know that there is multiple bills right now in the legislature in relation to special education cross-subsidy, a very hot topic at the legislature. We know that there had been conversations about fully funding cross-subsidy. I was a skeptic right from the very beginning. That has a $750 million per year price tag to it. So I wasn't hopeful that we'd see a long-term, but we have heard that maybe they're going to increase the percentage. Right now, our cross-subsidy is calculated and we receive 6.43% of the cross-subsidy as a reimbursement of state aid. So we're hoping we might see an increase. That to us is a little over $500,000 right now, so we're hopeful. I just put in as an estimate that maybe we'd see an additional $250,000 if that keeps moving forward in the legislature. But you can see at this time, we're not having an administrative recommendation to add anything at this time. But I hope as we get into May and June and we hear more from the legislature, that we might see us being able to increase our revenue slightly. The revenue budget comparison is just looking at our past 4 years of revenue. Fiscal year 20 and 21 are final. These are audited numbers. And then budgeted 22 is what we budgeted June 30th of 2022. And then you'll see the revenues that we shared. And then here's where I have added that potential $4 million investment of ESSER to help balance the budget. And we'll see how that plays out.
Okay.
At the bottom, I just have a few revenue notes just as kind of an overview of how we get to that 1.6 million increase compared to budgeted 22. We have about $2 million more in the levy, but that's mostly LTFM. That is because of those timing issues of when we're receiving some of those dollars. It does look like we're gonna receive slightly more special education revenue, but I'm putting in a comment of a loss of budgeted revenue of gen ed because this past year, if you remember, when we did our adopted budget, we budgeted on 8180 students, and we're probably gonna be closer to 8,000 students. So we're gonna be seeing comparatively a drop in revenue because we're gonna stay at that lower amount compared to what was budgeted in 2022. And then again, we're seeing an additional loss of compensatory revenue of about 300,000. And again, this is not all encompassing. These are kind of the high level. There's literally 1,000 different budget codes that we work through. But overall, that kind of gets us to that 1.6 million. Any questions on the revenue comparison? Yeah.
Could you just restate what you said in terms of if we were to have a re-enrollment of 50 students, just restate that again.
Yep, so if we were to see, based on using the basic allowance plus other component pieces of general education revenue, that $420,700 would be what could be new revenue for us if we saw 50 new students. Any other questions on this page? The next page, I just have some overviews and definitions again. I'm going to just scroll down to a mini chart. The school district often looks at our expenditures now. We've rolled from revenues to looking at our expenditures. The district has often shared a comparison of labor versus non-labor. So again, just sharing with you that of our general fund budget, and this is fiscal year 21 because this is our last audited revenues, so since 22, fiscal year 22 that we're in right now is not finished, these would be the last final numbers. Of our general fund expenditures, so this is just our general fund, wages and benefits account for 79% of our budget, and then all other is 21%. So if you think about our budget, just shy of 80% of our budget is people, so salary and wages, and 20% is everything else that we pay for that isn't people. I do want to note that under non-labor includes all of our contracted services, so even inside of that little yellow or little red pie are a bunch of people because we contract for many services in our general fund, and that would also include our transportation for Voyager Bus. This would include many special education folks, other contracts that we have for services throughout the district. So even though we say non-labor because they're not our employees, there's still people being served under that non-labor. And then just as the asterisk at the bottom, of that 79% of the labor cost, 69% is salaries and 31% is benefits. So just to give you that perspective of those dollar amounts. Any questions on that piece? I'm gonna scroll to the next page and talk about our preliminary expense side budget for the general fund. And I do have a really colorful bar graph, which is one of my favorites. I really feel like that's cries of joy for the budget.
And potential future student.
Yes. That student is worth $6,863 in just a few years, folks, so we're excited about that.
Hopefully more.
Yes. So looking at our overall general fund, keeping in mind this is our general fund, our current FY22 budget on the expenditure side was just shy of $115 million, $114.9 million. Right now, we are projecting just over $118 million as our general fund expenditure budget going into fiscal year 23. This equates to just an overall around 2.5% increase, or just over $3 million difference between fiscal year 22 and 23. The main reasons for that are settled contracts and other costs and issues related to our current economy. One of the areas that we are seeing some increases is in our fuel costs. So our transportation budget has gone up a little bit higher than we expected. And just overall, some of our supply costs have gone up. Not materially a ton of money. If you look at our different categories here, you can see that on the bar graph, the highest amount that we budget right now is for what we call elementary and regular instruction. These would be the staff, certified and non-certified staff members, and costs, including supplies related to elementary and regular instruction. That is approximately $48.5 million is projected. Our second highest now is special education instruction. This includes our staff, our certified and non-certified staff in special education. This is also where we would see contracts and other contracted services, and then including the supplies and the transportation related to special education under special education. Then you can see that our next highest would be sites and buildings. This would include the staff and costs related to heating and maintaining our buildings and the staff that go along with those buildings. This would also include LTFM projects. So those projects such as, if you recall, we're doing windows at Condon, we did doors, we're hoping to do a roof, but we're hearing that we may not be able to get supplies right now, so that one might get delayed. Those would include capital projects as well. Pupil support services, that is under the 700 series. This would include nursing staff, counseling staff, other licensed support staff. The instructional support services, or the 600 series, this would include our curriculum, our staff development, and other staff related to supporting the instructional support services of our district. This is where we would find textbooks and workbooks and other curriculum-based costs. We have our district support services. This would include human resources, business services. This also includes our technology department. So technology is in this area as well, so that includes all the staff and costs related to district support services. Administration includes both district administration and site administration. This would include principals and assistant principals under administration. And then fiscal and other costs. This one includes our general liability insurance for the district, and it also includes our projected severance payments. And again, overall, we're projecting a slightly over $3 million increase at this time, keeping in mind that over the next 2 months, we'll be kind of digging into these a little bit more. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide a little bit more information as we get more final information on costs related to certain staff, certain contracts. We'll be able to finalize those a little bit better. We also have our updates for benefits. We are seeing a 6% increase in health insurance, so we'll have to build that cost in. That was in and of itself a little over $1 million for the whole district, but that includes all funds, not just the general fund, so we'll have to do that. So you're probably saying to yourself, revenues, I remember that being 13.6. Expenditures, that looks like 18. So we'll scroll just to the last page, and again, I have some notes here, but I'm gonna go to the bottom to show you that, oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
You just gave us so much information. Could you just go back to, and it's the smallest one on your color-coded,
Vocational.
Yeah, can
Yeah.
you just review that again?
I can. So vocational education in what we call UFARs, or how we have to report to the state, there's a whole series of when we have qualifying vocational education expenditures. So this would be our CTE programs, but it's not just limited to those things that qualify for CTE revenue. So we do have some programs and services that are considered career and tech, but don't qualify for that special revenue. It just comes out of our general fund, general revenue costs. But those are those approvable vocational education programmings. Thank you, and I can provide more detail on those specific ones. I don't have them with me.
So do the teachers for CTE classes come out of that fund or out of the elementary and secondary regular instruction fund?
So if they qualify for a CTE specific UFARS related departmental course, they would come out of that. If it's not one that's identified by the state of Minnesota as a vocational program, it would come out of the green elementary, secondary.
So is there a total budget for vocational education, or career and tech education? I guess I'm asking is, we obviously spend more than $1.4 million on CTE.
We do.
And so that's what I'm asking, okay.
Yep, and then CTE has a levy and mini aid, not much aid, but mostly levy. We also are a participant with Perkins funds, so we do get some federal Perkins funds, but for the most part, we do not get revenue that covers this. It's part of the general fund. We just identify it as vocational in our budgeting.
Yeah, and I thank you for asking that question, Member Oswald. I think that in the presentation that Danette Siebel did a couple months back, February maybe it was, that did cover some of that. It was,
yeah,
the funding piece. Yeah.
Right, and there is a lot of advocating for more career and vocational funding at the state level, and we'd love to see an increase in Perkins allocations as well. We're in a consortium, so we're in with Lake Superior and I think one or two other districts. So we work collectively to try to capture dollars that can get used. I will say that Danette Siebel, the principal at East, is one of the most knowledgeable people in the region, let alone the state, in Perkins and vocational. We're very lucky to have her, and she does a lot of the coordinating here for the district to make sure that we're utilizing and generating as much revenue as we can to get those qualifying costs. To get access to the career and technical education levy, teachers have to be certified, and so does the program. So it isn't enough just to have the teacher qualified, but the program also has to be approved by the state, and we do an application each year to say what we have for qualifications so that we can levy. Any other questions on this? Thank you for those questions, those were great. I'm just gonna go to the bottom of the last page. Again, if we were to look at the $113.6 million we're currently projecting in general education revenues, and we included an ESSER investment of $4 million, and we utilize some of the assigned revenue or some of our restricted revenues that we have in fund balances to help offset some of the costs going in of approximately $400,000, that would give us an adjusted preliminary revenue of just over the 118 million, which would give us a current balance budget. So we would need to invest our ESSER dollars into just maintaining our current operational budget, which includes the majority of our classroom staffing, all of the associated transportation, and our operating capital revenues that go along with that.
Does this include any reserve fund investments?
So the 400,000 would be using a reserve to help pay off the budget.
So it's actually decreasing our reserves?
It would, but we have some reserved budget, so it wouldn't be the 3.9 that we have in our unreserved fund. We'd be using some of our reserves to spend down that. I know this is a lot to absorb. I know that there's so much more we could talk about, and I hope that we have the opportunity to follow up if you have other questions as you're rereading it and maybe being excited about the charts and graphs that you saw. I'm certainly open to different colors if you'd like them to be different colors. But please ask questions. I'm very much looking forward to our opportunity to spend more time to talk about more of the details of as we pull this budget together and then talk about other funds. As I had shared, our plan is to have our first committee of the whole just to talk about budget on May 12th. And then we'll follow up to approximately 2 weeks later, and then approximately 2 weeks after that. And during that time, we will all be working as a district team to kind of pull together as much information as we can to provide clarity, to be looking at enrollment, to be looking at our expenditures to make sure that we can get as close as we can. Then we'll also be bringing forward all of the ESSER related, give you an update of where we've come from, and then how we're going to be using those coming into the future. So we look forward to more dialogue and conversations about that. But I think just remembering that, you know, our overall operational budget as it stands right now, based on our current enrollment, we would not be able to maintain all of the programs, staff, and services we're providing right now without the help of ESSER. So when our revenues are not available to us anymore, we're probably going to have some really important conversations about how our budget remains balanced without the support of those ESSER funds, which are helping maintain that goal of trying to keep our staffing where we were pre-pandemic at the end of FY20 walking into fiscal year 21. So thank you again for the opportunity. I look forward to sharing more and open for any final questions.
More of a comment than a question. I just want to say thank you, CFO Erickson, for all of your hard work that has gone into this. And I think that as a board and as a community, I'm glad that we have decided to invest ESSER funding into maintaining our current staffing and current programming, because I think that is one of the best things we can do to make sure that we're bridging the gap from the unfinished learning needs and unmet mental health needs at this time, is to continue some of the program we already have, as opposed to make reductions as well. So thank you for that, and a reminder to the board that we did have a 8 o'clock closed session scheduled, but that will be at the end of the board meeting, and we have other guests who will be part of that as well through.
I just wanted, thank you too. I always appreciate this particular background information, and I'm really glad so many people were here to hear it with us.
Me too. Thanks for staying.
See what we are tackling. I also just wanted to mention thank you, Superintendent Magus, for sharing that webinar that the NSBA did on to help board members understand the budget. Everyone has a role in the budget, so watch that. And that also on the School Board Association website, there are some links under district operation, just understanding Minnesota school finance and that. And I know I found that always helpful to go to at this time of the year to kind of refresh my memory. So just another resource for board members. So.
And I want to thank our finance committee of Chair Derek Eater and Member Kirby and Member Oswald are our finance committee, working with Kathy to bring the vision of the board and our desire for our budget, you know, into alignment as well. So really want to appreciate your work and continue to give us a good finance reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it was appropriate that you would remind me that I have skipped over the budget, because that would be your baby. Okay, so now we're going to go to standing committee reports. We have 3 of them: Committee of the Whole report, Human Resource, and Policy Committee, and I know that they'll each be under like 7 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bonds for our Committee of the Whole. Just a review of that meeting. It was held April 5th, and it was an opportunity for lots of great presentations.
Thank you, and I was gonna say, don't steal my thunder because
Okay,
it was
I
full of
won't.
really
I
great
won't.
information, and what I really appreciate about the committee as a whole is that it really focused a lot on teaching and learning, and it was very timely because there were a number of recent reports that had come out, and the meeting was really timely. So I'll be quick in the sharing of this. So there was a presentation given by me and my entire team, and I want to thank them for all being there. So the entire teacher learning equity team was there to help share and present and field questions. So we presented the World's Best Workforce update. Denise Quay, our American Indian Education Coordinator, reported on the concurrence and non-concurrence. We also had a report by Nate Smith. And of course, that's what happens when you click a screen and it goes away on you. Nate Smith, our Education Equity Coordinator, provided an update related to the EAC bylaws. There was a presentation by Callie DeVrent related to our Project Aware grant that we received and the work that's being accomplished there. We also had an update by Principal Nathan Golke related to ALC and AEO. Sherry Williams provided an update related to preschool and early childhood. We also had some insight on the redistricting that CFO Erickson went through today, and I also provided an update related to the status of the SRO discussion and where we are with that. And those were all of the items that were presented, and it was a 3-hour meeting, so I encourage everyone to, to take a view at it and listen to it in the background as you are just hanging out at home. So I think it's worthwhile viewing. So that completes my report.
Thank you. Just a reminder that, if you go to our YouTube, I noticed that there were 24 of us that watched the committee the whole meeting on our YouTube site. 4 of them was probably right here on our board. But we have to smile sometimes after an hour and a half. So we're gonna go to our next committee report, and that's HR Finance,
Great.
which is now HR Business, isn't it?
Yep. Yes. All right, I've had my Red Bull and I have 7 minutes, so let's go. All right. So we started out with a guest presentation. Becky Crane came in and talked about a grant that the team worked together from the Minnesota Department of Education. It's around $18,000. It's called EQUIP, Evidence-Based Quality Intervention Practices Innovation, and it's great because it's going to help our staff with some professional development when they go into homes for our 0 to 2 special needs, so our littlest, and this was set up so it could be a sustainable, self-perpetuating thing, right? That's fair? Okay, moving on. So next we have the HR staffing report, and Director Severance was out recruiting staff to our district, so she submitted this written report. But I did want to bring to attention that our renewal rates for PEIP have been received, and so our premiums have gone up about 6%, and that is about roughly $1 million. Yep, and we had sort of expected this, so that was just additional information when we think about where we're at budgeting. We've gotten an update from the superintendent to talk about contract negotiations, so that was another thing that might be of interest. Moving on to business services, so B1, the finance department report. That was a verbal report, and what I wanted to bring to attention is that our Moody's annual review had positive news, which is fantastic. To think about getting positive news from Moody and being anything to do with education is quite a feat. So we went from BA1 to BAA2. And this gives us a positive outlook. We're getting an investment grade rating. And we also, what they took into consideration is the growth in our fund balance. And they also recognize that we are operating at an enrollment loss, but we have a plan and we look to be stable. In addition, we are growing our fund balance. So that's great news for our finance and the team. So thank you for that. There also was some discussion about just a little piece on finance education for the special services cross subsidies. You can find CFO Erickson give a great explanation of that in the YouTube video. Okay, next we have our enrollment report, and we're projecting to be around 7,962 students-ish. So that's what we got from our enrollment report. Okay, whew, getting lightheaded. Okay. Next we have our child nutrition report, and you can just see even we are operating understaffed in our child nutrition, in our food services. You can look that up, but we are running pretty short with our food service workers. And we're also having some food and supply availability, our ability to get some products, and I hear that from my middle schooler constantly, so he has not been happy lately about that, just throwing that out there, okay? Next, we're on our facilities department report, and we are still have some ongoing discussion about PSS track 1, the first lane in the track, so hopefully before my next election we can get that settled. And then we also have the construction and the master plan is continuing for our portion of what's going on up on the hill, so that is good news. And then you can see some various reports on our health and safety. Okay, technology department report. Did I lose it? Probably did. I need to get a better system. Okay, so what we know to be true is that the big boards, what are they called in the elementary? Smart boards, thank you. So that is starting to happen, correct? Let's just take a minute and appreciate the smart boards right now.
Yeah.
So what Bart talked about is they're gonna be working second shifts to minimize disruption. So as they install smart boards, they're making sure to be cognizant of the teachers and the students' time in the classroom, and they're working around that, so that's great. Okay, transportation. We have replaced an engine. That was a great topic of conversation. We generally don't replace engines, but because of supply chain issues, we are choosing to do some repair on our buses. You can see, what was great to see is that in March there were 41 field trips, and in April there was 50 field trips, so it's just great to see our students out and about again. Okay, next, which is probably why you're all here, is to talk about what resolutions we're going to be voting on as a board later, and that is going to, the first one will be the paraprofessionals contract. Next, we have the DFT's contract, the Duluth Federation of Teachers. We also have some resolutions for donations and also a trail easement on Central on the Hill property. CFO Erickson, do you just want to quickly talk about that clarification of the trail easement on Central on the Hill?
Yeah, just a brief explanation. This doesn't change anything for the district. There was just some clarity that was needed from the city of Duluth to provide a little bit more detail on an easement that we already have. They just wanted to provide a little bit more clarity of where the in and out is on the trail. So Dave Spooner has been working with folks at the city of Duluth to get that done, and that will become a part of our development agreement with the city of Duluth and go through that process. So it is just more clarity than it is any major changes.
Great, and then there were some other things under the consent agenda, but I know I had talked to some board members, and under 4 consent agenda D2, the budget revisions, there were a lot of budget revisions, and those are done as part of budget cleanup. CFO Erickson, could you just give a brief explanation of that for us?
So a lot of those pages were just moving budgets from one line item to another as we found clarity in where they were originally budgeted in our system versus where they really needed to be. So our finance team had just finally found some opportunity to kind of go through those. And so those are really just a net equal. They're just moving from one line item to another.
Thank you. And then we have some information under miscellaneous information that doesn't require action from the board, but does, you can find any information on board book. And that concludes the HR Business Services report. Oh, yes. Member Sandholm.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for asking CFO Erickson that question I brought to your attention earlier about the large number of changes that basically took place on the 25th of March or something like that. But I did have one more question in here because I think it was on page 9 CFO Erickson, and I just kind of want an explanation on the movement. Because I didn't see it move back in. It was on the ESSER fund. It was like an $8 million shift there, and I can't find it again.
Can you clarify which document you're on?
I'm on the budget changes that.
Got it.
And I'm trying to find it again because she went quickly there.
Member Sandholm, I'll have to probably defer to Simone Zunich, who isn't here tonight. I can follow up with you, but most likely what that is when we initially receive revenues, we have to expend money first and then request reimbursement for ESSER. So we probably received payments for things we had already expended, so we might be seeing from an ESSER expenditure lane, if that's
Yeah, it was recorded as a debit.
Yep, so that could be a transfer from one of the ESSER funding sources. So what might have happened is it got coded to one of the ESSERs and it needs to go to the right
here it is.
ESSER. So I'll have to work with Simone if you can give me.
It's on page 6 of the 40.
Yep.
And that's, again, that was the question I had to the chair of the committee, member Derek Eater, about just the large number of changes that had took place. But yeah, then on page 6 of the 40, you know, $8,650,000 as a debit of ESSER. So it just helped explain how, so we can all understand what's going on there.
Yeah, so, and again, there's probably more detail behind it that Simone can help us with, and I'll try to follow up with you to get more of that detail. But when we have those ESSER dollars, as they come in, that's when we record them, so we don't have budgeted line items because it's reimbursed. We didn't get a big giant check of ESSER money. We have to spend the money first, submit that information to the state through SERVs, and then we get draws and reimbursement. So it could just be the timing of the reimbursement that they're showing right now as a budget change to identify that we received funds that we hadn't originally budgeted for because we hadn't received or expended the funds yet.
I did understand and follow, you know, the other shifts because they were, a lot of them were right next to each other.
Yep.
But that one doesn't show up as.
Yep, and when we do the whole ESSER explanation, we have that, a couple different documents that we've been using as running documents for the board that show our expenditures and our revenues and the overall budgets for all those. We'll make sure that the timing of when that's happening in our system versus how we're budgeting that throughout our spreadsheets will make more sense as we can kind of see them collectively together.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I did have one more thing on 5B, the properties. And I think this is more of an explanation to the public, having had a chance to clarify this with CFO Erickson prior to the meeting. I gotta scroll it down. So this, and I could see the public reading this and having major concerns where it says, it talks about the demolition of Old Central. And you're gonna, this report came from ISD?
This comes from our project manager. I already emailed him after we had our conversation to make sure that we call it Central on the Hill.
Yeah.
They've referred to Historic Central as Historic Central and Central on the Hill as Old Central. But many other people think of Historic Central as Old Central, so we're just gonna clarify that and call it Central on the Hill. So we'll edit that report so that it's.
Yeah, because many in the community might see it as Old Central and I'm asking questions about the demolition of Old Central. So thank you for helping make that change in the future.
Anything else? Moving on then to our policy committee and Chair Loeffler Kemp.
Thank you, and I'll try and keep this to 7 too.
Although you had a lot.
Yeah, we had a lengthy meeting this past month, but I want to also start by just thanking Member Sandholm and Member Sadowski for being on this committee with me as board members. But we're also very much assisted by Assistant Superintendent Bonds, as well as Patty Paquette, the Executive Secretary, who's really the keeper of the policies and as we talk about them and they get updated. So really want to recognize the work you all do to help our committee out. And just because we have a few extra people here tonight, I'd also just say that the policies are on our website. They're 3 clicks. We learned that in a training we were at. Your policies should be 3 clicks on your website for people to find them. And so they are. I tried it out. As we are reviewing policies as a policy committee, there's kind of 3 areas. There's policies we're required to review every year. There's policies that after the legislative session, we get changes, particularly with state statutes. And there's new policies. So there's a lot of policies that for various reasons we might be reviewing at different times. And that gives you a little bit of background. But for this month, we had policies for our first reading. And that was policy 419, tobacco-free environment. This is to replace a former policy 1140. And then we also had policies from the 800 series. And again, all of our policies are in a variety of different sections. And the 800 series mainly has to do with sites and buildings. And we had the policies that we're reviewing this month in that series are policies that we've had practices on, we just didn't have a policy on. So I highlight that. And then under the policies for the second reading, this is 110 Duluth Public Schools website accessibility policy. And again, appreciate Jason Crane's work on that and support with us on that. And then the other area we had a long discussion on, and we were grateful it was brought forward, is more of a regulation, so more of the procedure behind a policy, and that's Regulation 419, dealing with smudging and pipe ceremonies regulation. And I guess I would also add, again, appreciate Jen Larva and Edie House who presented with that regulation as well. So all of the policies will be on the consent agenda later on in the agenda, and appreciate all of the discussion we had. Member Sadowski, did you have any, I know you weren't there, Paul, but that you wanted to comment on?
The only thing I have in my notes is just for the whole board to consider, I mean, for the tobacco policy, is under 2D. We talked about how that's optional, and we can kind of think about it as a board and maybe as a policy committee going forward, whether we want to have that section on there.
So review that, and then I would just kind of end by saying we moved the policy committee to 3:30 on the Tuesday that we have our committee of the whole meeting rather than a separate day, and partly doing that to we have a lot of staff that often present to us and community members, so this keeps it at an earlier time and hopefully supports them as well. So so thank you. Did I do it, Jill?
You did.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Member Sadowski,
Oh,
can you
question?
just clarify for
What 2D
that policy where you said optional? I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that we capture where you
number
want us to consider.
2, section 2, letter D, from my notes and from my memory, that's optional. It says the following language is not required by law, but is recommended by the MSBA. And then I just had it in my notes that it's something that we can kind of look at, you know, over the next few weeks and consider. It has to do with whether says the school district will not solicit or accept any contributions or gifts of money, curriculum materials, or equipment from companies that directly manufacture and are identified with tobacco products, and so on and so forth.
So then can you just clarify the ask?
It's just that it was optional.
It's just a comment that it's optional, and I had it in my notes. It's not really an ask, it's just, because that was our first reading of that, right, Lucy?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something to kind of think about over the next, till we have our next policy meeting, and if you have any feedback on that, let us know.
About whether we should include it in the policy? And it's an MSBA has that in their model policy.
Yep, it's
yes.
recommended by the
Okay.
MSBA, so I'm assuming we'll probably go that way, but it's optional.
just really want to thank those of you, CFO Erickson, for bringing forward that 800 series and, you know, looking at that too. So moving on, it's our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve our consent agenda. We've all got it. A second. Member Eater makes the motion. A second to accept everything that's on the consent. Member Oswald, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our consent agenda is approved 7-0. Thank you. And again, we've all had copies of what's on the consent agenda. So now we're at the resolutions. It's number 12. And it's recommended by MSBA and by just how we have our board meetings that we read the resolutions aloud, so it is transparent to our community. So our first resolution is letter A, and it's the approval of the paraprofessionals. And Member Sandholm, thank you.
Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that the collective bargaining agreement between Independent School District 709 and the paraprofessionals employees, a summary of which is in the hands of all school board members, be approved and adopted for the period of July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2023, inclusive, and that the chairperson and clerk of the school board be hereby authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the school district. Resolution number HR 4223874.
So Member Sandholm makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Sadowski is the second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the resolution HR 4-22-3874, the paraprofessional employees contract, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 7-0. Our next resolution is the approval of the Duluth Federation of Teachers Collective Bargaining Agreement. Member Sadowski.
Resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that the collective bargaining agreement between Independent School District 709 and the Duluth Federation of Teachers, a summary of which is in the hands of all school board members, be approved and adopted for the period July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023, inclusive, and that the chairperson and clerk of the school board be hereby authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the school district. Resolution number HR 422-3381.
So Member Sadowski makes the motion. Do I have a second to approve? Member Loeffler Kemp. Is there any discussion?
How great it is to have a contract. And thank everybody for their really hard work from the bottom of the boards. Thank you all for your hard work on this.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Any abstentions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. I did say that, right? Okay. So, motion carries 7-0. Our next resolution is on the acceptance of grants and awards.
I'm gonna be really disappointed because everybody's fleeing my resolution. Nobody to give me a standing ovation. The resolution of acceptance of grant awards to Duluth Public Schools, whereas Minnesota statute 465.03 requires the school district to accept grants by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, whereas acceptance of the grant in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of Duluth Public Schools, Now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described grant from said organizations in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to the organizations. This resolution contains 4 different grants. One from Northern Regional Implementation Project, one from the Northland Foundation, and 2 different ones from the Minnesota Department of Education. And I'm sure that our CFO Erickson is more than pleased to have surprise money whenever a grant is approved. So I move resolution B-4-22-3882.
Member Oswald makes the motion to accept the grant. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstain? Any discussion? That come first. That was supposed to come first, yeah, okay. It passes 7-0. That's $130,000 in grants. Our next resolution is acceptance of donations, and
That's me, right?
is that Member Eater?
Yeah, I think so,
Okay.
right? All right, I move, let's see, B, resolution, sorry, I've just lost control of my papers. Okay, resolution 4-22-3883, acceptance of donations to the Duluth Public Schools, whereas Minnesota statute 465-03 requires school districts to accept donations by resolutions expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, and whereas acceptance of the donations in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools. Now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described donations from said organizations in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public School wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to these various individuals and organizations. That is B-4-22-3883.
So Member Eater makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to bring to attention one of them real quick, Lincoln Park from the Larry and Donna Polkrabek Foundation for Ski Club at Lincoln Park. They went on Wednesdays, they loaded them up on buses, they got ski equipment, they got lessons, and they got to have a great time at Mont du Lac. My son said it was great, and it was just like a very diverse and inclusive group of kids that had a great time, so thank you for that. So I just wanted to bring that one forward.
Any other comments? All those in favor of accepting our donation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 7-0. Our next resolution is the trail.
This is an exciting one, everyone.
Okay.
I'm gonna run with it on the trail here. No.
Okay.
Resolution 4223884, I move approval of trail easement clarification on Central on the Hill property. Resolved that Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, approves of the easement clarification provided by the City of Duluth related to trails on property currently owned by the district, currently designated at 800 East Central entrance, and directs the school board to sign the easement with the City of Duluth. This agreement does not materially change the current approved easement. Rather, it provides clarification on trail designation on the property. I move resolution 4223884.
Member Loeffler Kemp makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Sandholm seconded. Is there any discussion on this, even though CFO Erickson already gave us a background, so thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. We have one more resolution, and
I have that.
awesome.
Resolution B-4-22-3885, redistricted school board election districts. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 709, St. Louis County, State of Minnesota, acting pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute 204B.135 Subdivision 2 et sequence. And for those of you who did not take Latin in high school, as I did, that means "and the following."
Okay, thank you.
That the school board redefines the following school board election districts as follows. District 1 shall include the townships of Gunnison, Lakewood, Normanna, and North Star, the city of Rice Lake, and voting precincts 1 through 5 and 7 in the city of Duluth. District 2 shall include voting precincts 6 and 8 through 14 in the city of Duluth. District 3 shall include voting precincts 15 through 19 and 20 through 22 through 25 in the city of Duluth. District 4 shall include voting precincts 21, 26 through 30, and 32 through 34 in the city of Duluth. So I move the passage of Resolution B4 223885.
Member Kirby has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Sadowski seconds. Is there any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. That ends our resolution reading for tonight. That makes us go to 13, special resolutions and action items. We have none. It's number 14, questions or other. Is there anything the board wishes to share? Anything, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Member Oswald makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Eater is the second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned at 7-0 vote.